Hello, welcome back to Star Citizen. On our current mini-series, we're taking a look at the different ships that are available in Star Citizen right now and how good they are. And speaking of good, this episode we're going to be talking about the MISC Freelancer, which is hella good right now. So let's get into it. I wanted to make some last-minute equipment changes, but the game doesn't let me because update 3.71 hit the servers and it tried to solve issues, but created a whole new buckload of issues on its own, which haven't been fixed at this point in the recording, and I just said, well, screw it. I did only rent the ship for like a day to try it out and make the video and all that, and I can't wait until they maybe fix it in a few hours. Anyway, the Freelancer. Freelancer is a pretty decent ship that's in a very interesting position, because size-wise, it still classifies as a small ship, so it can use small landing pads, and when we have that at some point in the game, small jump points.
You're clear to take off.
However, it already uses size 2 components, which are normally which you'd normally expect in a medium-sized ship, not a small one. And medium components are pretty much always better than small-sized components. And pretty much in all aspects it compares really well to pretty much anything that's available in the game, which is crazy. Anyway, first some basic things about the series. There basically exists 4 different variants. What you're seeing at here is the base Freelancer variant, just the regular good old basic one. Let's track the landing gear. It's a nice looking ship. No doubt about that. There also exists the DUR version, which supposedly is the exploration-focused version, so you would expect it to be good at staying in space long, you know, having maybe faster quantum drive, better fuel tanks, and all that kind of stuff. Right now, as far as I can tell, it really doesn't, because just looking at the base equipment and the values of the fuel tanks especially, it seems to have even worse properties than the basic Freelancer, which I think is a bit odd. So, but I guess they'll probably fix it at some point. Then there's the currently rather imbalanced MISS version. MISS is for missiles, you know. It has more missile launchers than all the other versions do, while basically having the same in all other aspects. And missiles right now are pretty good because countermeasures don't work reliably, so whenever you fire a missile, there's a pretty decent chance that it hits the opponent and that it does pretty decent damage. Which combined with the base Freelancer already being pretty good, makes for a rather imbalanced ship at the moment. And then there's also the Max. The Max is slightly bigger and wider, but has enhanced cargo space. The base Freelancer version has a cargo capacity of 66, and the Max I think has 120 if I'm not mistaken. So it's a lot. Whoops, that's quite a lot of ships. Let me focus on combat here real quick. Come on. Guys that I'm supposed to protect, could you please start moving? We're in a small ship, you know, just evade a little bit. Sorry, I need to focus here for this mission. It's a little bit weird. I thought since this was a low-paying one, I would have been a bit more chill, but I got many small ships to protect, and they apparently aren't moving to just even try something basic like avoiding being shot at. So I need to take care of these boogies real quick. Not dead. Come on. Damn it. .325A seem to be a lot tougher than you'd expect them to. Just something I noticed by doing these kind of missions. Now they started moving and firing. Holy shit. Didn't quite expect that to happen. Thank you.
It's like watching an artist at work.
Wouldn't call it that.
Very.
Note to myself, don't try and do these ship explanation videos with ECM missions. They're way too stressful. Anyway, as you can see, the ship, even the base variant it does pretty well in combat situations. The main reason for this is that the main armament of the ship consists of 2 turrets that are mounted on the side of the ship that both are able to hold 2 size 3 weapons each. And since they are in a special turret mount, they already count as being a gimbal weapon, so you don't need to add anything to it in order to make it gimbal. It will always be gimbal. Any more?
And look, even more arseholes.
Okay. And being gimbal is pretty good right now, with aim assist being pretty well against most opponents. And 4 size 3 weapons in total is also pretty hilarious, because I just shot down a Saber as the last ship. That's basically a dedicated combat craft that is only by itself being able to carry 4 size 3 guns, but then they're in a fixed configuration, so in addition it also has to aim a lot better than I have to do in this ship. And other dedicated combat ships are similar in terms of armament, like the Hornet, if we were to go with a fixed loadout, could have 1 size 4, 3 size 3, so a little bit more than the Saber, but if I switch that to a gimbal loadout, as I discussed a few episodes ago when I was discussing the Hornet, you basically lose out on some of those sizes to 3 size 2 and 1 size 4. So damage-wise, the ship compares really well with pretty much any combat ship right now. And those combat ships are not that much smaller, because the ship is rather compact. So, and while the maneuverability is not excellent, it's good enough in conjunction with gimbal weapons. So, and due to it having medium-sized components, the shields are much better than most fighter craft shields are. So it basically is pretty good at combat right now. On the other side of things, if I compare it to the next bigger ship, which would be the Constellation, yeah, the Constellation has 1 whole size increase on all guns, so it does a lot of, so it does a bit more damage. Like, you know, the size increase is like about 50% more damage. However, the Constellation has much more issues maneuvering. Interestingly enough, though, the Constellation is a little bit quicker in accelerating and decelerating, because basically half the ship is an engine.
I'd be happy to never fly again. Way to kick some ass!
So, are we done here, guys?
Let's get going while we still can.
Alright, thank you.
I'm sending you a little something. Any trouble?
Yeah. Don't mention it. So, as I've already said, let's basically recap. The ship is pretty good combat-wise. We've just seen that, and unless you want to take down a really huge ship, it can basically deal with anything. Then it can also do trading pretty well. On top of that, it has size 2 components, so it's pretty fast just getting from place A to place B, because having medium components also means you have a medium-sized quantum drive, which even the worst medium-sized quantum drive is better than the best size 1 quantum drive, so you're also faster and don't have to wait quite as long in the quantum travel waiting game. So at this point you probably expect something like, okay, what's the downside of the ship? Well, you're sort of looking at it, and it's the cockpit, you know? The ship is basically, the main inspiration for the ship is basically it's a giant truck in space, and the cockpit really looks like it, because we have this very small window plane that is, thankfully, where there's a window, it's relatively unobstructed, unlike for instance in the Constellation, where on top of having a small window frame, you also have some Strouds that might sometimes be in your way. But then another thing that's a little bit, that takes a bit getting used to, is that you're not seated in the middle of the ship, but on the left, because there's a co-pilot seat next to you instead of behind you or in front of you as in most other ships. So that's kind of, I don't know if it's a real downside, but it's at least a quirk that you have to get used to, because you always have to think, okay, I'm not sitting in the center of the ship right now, but I'm sitting slightly to the left, and you might have difficulties seeing everything, especially things slightly above and under you. So that's a downside, I guess. The other downside, let me just make sure that we're not going to ram anything while I go to exterior view. Doesn't look like it. Okay, let's go to exterior view. The other downside is, you may have been wondering that I haven't talked about the ship's turret, because it has a turret back here, which I think is 2 size 3 guns, which is okay, but I haven't talked about it so far, and the main reason why I haven't is, you see this little hump between the turret and the front? I just wanted to make sure that I avoid that rock, because it was kind of looking like it was getting close. You see that small little hump? That hump really doesn't do anything. There's even it's just a small metal sheet, and there's really nothing happening there. It's not like there's an important engine component there. It's just basically there so the turret can't fire forward, which is a weird way of addressing an issue to making the ship not too powerful. Because if you have a gunner, the gunner cannot shoot probably the same target that the main ship does shoot at, so you either have to shoot ships as the ship is bypassing them, or something along those lines, or another ship that the ship isn't engaging, which makes aiming really difficult, because you're in a moving ship that tries to engage one target that you don't see, and you're shooting at something else that is also moving relative to you, and the ship is moving in a completely different direction that you have no control over. So even with 2 size 3 guns, you're probably not gonna kill much with that. Which, you know, so the turret is sort of there, but is it worth putting someone in there? I don't think so, unless you're going into a really hot combat zone and want to have something that protects your ass. It's really not worth it, in my opinion. And the only reason preventing it is this weird hump. Interestingly, if you collide with, like, asteroids in just the right place, you can actually remove the hump, because it's just a metal sheet that can be removed from the ship, and then you could technically fire forward. So just saying, if you don't like the hump, you can do. There's always a possibility to remove it. Now we went completely off course. Well, weird. Aside from that, is there another downside? If there is, I haven't seen it. Also, other small things are pretty well. Like the ship has a pretty decent replenishment rate for its hydrogen fuel, and pretty decent sized tanks. So it's not like you're running out of fuel quite as quickly as most fighter craft will. You can stay out in the verse for a pretty long time. There's just, you know, it's hard to find issues with the ship. Maybe one small issue is that the ship only has a single power plant, and especially if you upgrade the shields and go for full energy weapon boat loadout, it might have difficulties both taking care of the shields if they have to recharge and your weapons firing, which you could obviously solve by just using not energy-based weapons but ballistic weapons, which the ship in the stock configuration does not come with the laser repeater and Gatling gun that I have equipped it with, but it comes with two ballistic cannons, which are a pretty decent weapon. I think DPS-wise they're even better than the weapons I've installed. But I just don't like having my entire ship loadout being based on ammunition-based weapons. But in the stock configuration, it can take care of some ships that the ship as I have equipped it right now will have some issues, like taking care of hammerheads and caterpillars. Will either require you to really unleash all your missiles at them, or having a full ballistic gun loadout which can bypass the shields and do damage even though you're not entirely able to destroy their shields. So, but I really, in most missions you run into fighter craft, and I think they're just having those ballistic guns is a little bit of an overstatement. So I went with the repeater loadout. Because I like repeaters, you know? I like Dakar! So there's that. So the ship may run into power consumption issues. The Constellation has 2 power generators for a reason, because it has even bigger guns. So the Constellation does not struggle with power requirements. The ship does. The only real downside I've seen is that decelerating the ship takes a long ass time. You know, even worse than the Constellation. Acceleration isn't too bad, but deceleration is a pain in the butt, which you really need to adjust your flight style to and start decelerating before you even get to wherever you wanted to decelerate as, or do this maneuver here, which is turn and burn, where basically you turn your ship around totally 180% and then just start using your main engine instead of the maneuvering thruster to accelerate in the different direction, which, as you can see here, the ship is still struggling a bit, but well, it's not that huge downside. You just need to adjust your flight style a little bit. Alright, what do we have? Cutlass? Of course do we have a fucking hammerhead. Fuck you. Ugh. It's just an 8,000 job. God. Grr. Well, I wanted to change to the ballistic guns, but the equipment manager isn't working right now. So, well, guess we'll take care of the rest, but ignore the hammerhead. Or we'll try to bypass the shield by almost ramming it, but not sure if I can reliably pull off that stunt. I don't have any missiles anymore. I used all my missiles to take care of a caterpillar earlier. And as you can see, 4 size 3 guns not enough to punch through the shields of a hammerhead. Also, the shield has holes, as you can see. One of our turrets just got damaged, even though the shield wasn't down. Yeah, don't think the ramming tactic will work. I'm just gonna get out of here. Not enough damage. Even the Constellation with 4 size 4 laser repeaters is just basically being able to out DPS the shield, but if you hit more than one shield dish, then it also won't be enough. So yeah, Hammerhead just has pretty decent shields. It's the first time that I've run into it for the 8,000 credits bounty mission. So good to know that it can also appear here. It was the 8,000 one. No, it was the 10,000 one. Okay, then I could have, you know, assumed it might happen. Anyway, but that's about it. We saw some combat. Can't take care of a hammerhead, but, you know, the rest, pretty good. No doubt about that. Anyway, that's it for this episode. In the next one, maybe after going through some of the best ships in the game right now, we should also take a look at what most people will, what kind of ship most people will are probably gonna have at release of the game. So in the next episode, we're gonna be taking a look at the Aurora and figure out which kinds of mission you'll still be able to do in that. Probably not take care of a hammerhead, you know, but there's other things that you can do, and if you modify the equipment a lot, then it might also not be quite as bad as your original opinion of that might be, but we'll see that next time. Have a good one.